You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame today. To talk about, I guess, being an editor-in-chief, magazines. Today I found out that it's not editor-and-chief. I thought of it, that's what I thought it was, but it's actually editor-in-chief. My guest today is Julie Partin, who is editor-in-chief of 405 Magazine, which everybody knows. I've had the pleasure of being in it a few times, which is really nice. My mum is super proud of me for being in it and always loves when I send her a copy. So shout out, Mum, if you're listening. One of the many people, I should say, that is listening, I think. I hope. Who knows? But my guest today is big in the magazine world in Oklahoma City. But we're not going to talk about that to start. We're going to talk about where you grew up. And in my notes, it says you went to Bixby High School.
I did go to Bixby High School.
Yeah.
But I grew up, first of all, thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm a fan of this podcast.
Thank you.
And it's exciting to be a guest. I looked up some of your past interviews, and you've had a lot of people on this podcast. We're talking like who's who in this state.
Thanks to the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, I have increased the scale, I should say, of my guests. Not to say that some of my guests haven't been great. I've had my brother-in-law on, which was forced, and a few other college friends, which were like, hey, can we be on your podcast? I was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, it's been, it's amazing when you have a partner like the Hall of Fame reach out on your behalf and the doors just open. And it's great, and you know this too in the media world, is if somebody reaches out to their friend on a referral, that is the most powerful thing ever, rather than a cold email, because everyone's like, oh, it's this random guy from Wales who has a podcast.
Exactly.
So yeah,
well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. And yes, so my Oklahoma ties, I was born in Tulsa, but then spent formative childhood years in Denver. And then we moved to Bixby when I was a teenager, and that's where I graduated high school.
Okay.
And Bixby then is different than Bixby now. It was, I think, Sonic and Taco Bueno were the only restaurants. We had 282 in my graduating class.
Yeah.
And the stories I hear about it now, because I don't make it back there too often, it's totally different. It's like Edmond.
It's like the place to be now, isn't it?
It's massive.
Yeah.
They've won something like 5 or 6 state championships in a row, which in football, which is like would have been wonderful to be a part of. But either way, I, at that point in time, really was excited to get out of Bixby. So after I graduated, I worked at Walt Disney World in Orlando for a year, and then went out to Los Angeles to study journalism at Biola. Lived there for 10 years, and was living in a high-rise in downtown LA, working on, TV and the news department, and we had 2 back-to-back daughters, and really got super sick of LA. Like the cost of living, the grind, the hustle, it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And so we started thinking about looking at other American cities, maybe that were more livable, more practical, a better fit for our families. And the ones that popped up was Nashville, Austin, Dallas, and then Oklahoma City, which my brother lives here. A lot of cousins live here. Some of my old friends from Tulsa live here. And everybody I knew that lived in Oklahoma City had a fantastic life. Giant house, traveled all the time, really great, high quality of living. And in the end, it ended up winning out. And we've loved it. I've been here since 2017.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Bixby, you probably think, I'm never going to live in Oklahoma City, right? Because there's like that Tulsa kind of area thing against Oklahoma City.
Well, I didn't even really think of Oklahoma City as what it is.
Right.
I thought of it as OU.
Yeah.
Because that's really the only reason I even came down this direction at that age.
Gotcha.
Maybe a college tour or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't even go to downtown Oklahoma City for the first time until I didn't even live in the state anymore and came back for my cousin's bachelorette party.
Yeah. I'm sure you got some great memories from that.
It was Bricktown, and I really...
You survived?
Well, people in this town don't get how beautiful Bricktown is when you're not expecting it.
Right.
So I had a friend from LA visit, and we rounded the corner, and he's literally like, like those canals are beautiful if you don't see them coming.
Full of lime scooters and bird scooters now, right?
But also the lights and the water, and then, eating outside and
that's like a bubble. I can
strolls.
see it.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Bricktown to this day, people talk about, if they aren't impressed with it, they aren't seeing it for what it is. It's like the Eiffel Tower and French people. Like, they don't get how enchanting it is when you're just experiencing it for the first time.
Right, when you see it sparkle for the first time.
Yes.
And you sat there on the steps. Eiffel Tower is special to me. We went there on a honeymoon. So I totally get it. Yeah, eating Nutella crepes and like totally broke, by the way. I had no money at the time, but it's funny you being there and you buy a cheap champagne and a baguette or whatever. It's the cliche thing, right? But you watch.
But it's also just the quintessential romantic travel experience that I hope everyone possible should get to have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what coffee shop you go to, they're all great.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So back to growing up, did you grow up thinking, I want to be in media, I want to be on TV, I want to be in news stuff? Yeah,
there was no question about that. Even as a really, really little kid, I just loved magazines, TV, all of it. Harry Potter, every single book that came out, I waited at Barnes & Noble at midnight and read it straight through. Same with every single movie.
Yeah.
Big fan of shows like Friends and Seinfeld, and I just always kind of knew. Like, I wanted to live in Hollywood from the time I was preteen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like nothing else even came close to be that interesting to me as that did.
So every decision then growing up led to putting you somewhere closer to Hollywood?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even the Orlando thing was just, wanting to work at Disney World.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How was that experience? Because I've had friends who have done it and they said it's amazing.
It really
My wife
is.
wants to go run the Disney half marathon or whatever it is, and we haven't been yet.
I did the Disney college program.
Yeah.
And that's the most fun I'll ever have. It just is. You have people from all over the world, the same age, 4,000 to 5,000 of them living in the same apartment complex, and your only obligation is to go work at Disney a couple times a week. And so it's just a wild good time. You go to the beach, you go to the parks. It's really, really fun. I almost didn't leave. But
I can see why. It sounds great.
But the thing is, while you're working there as this college kid, you see, the ghost of Christmas future in these 40, 50-year-olds who came and did the college program and then couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And then they're still, working in amusement park.
The Van Wilders of Disney. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just I felt like I needed to get back in college and graduate, or it might never happen.
Sure. To the Disney thing, what were some of the quirky rules that you couldn't do? Because they're kind of pretty strict on what you kind of can't do,
they've
right?
actually loosened up a little
ruthless.
bit. I got written up on Halloween for having glitter on my nails.
Yeah.
I got written up for wearing white socks instead of black socks. It was incredibly strict.
Yeah, regimented.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I've heard, but obviously, it gives you the experience and it gives the people coming the experience that they paid for. So,
yeah,
so you're part of that.
The average European family has to save up 7 years to take a Disney World trip. And
crazy.
So when push comes to shove, I always thought of that. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to give them the best experience. People put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah.
So I actually hated those strict rules like that, or like your shirt was untucked, or your shoes had the wrong color laces. It was wild. Even just minor details, but that's why it's such a quality experience.
Yeah, I went to Disneyland in Paris when I was super young, and it was me, my aunt, and my nan on a bus as well. I was miserable. Never ever going to Paris on a bus ever again. But the one thing I do remember vividly is at breakfast, Eeyore was sat on the step crying his eyes out, and then the chipmunks came over and sat on my aunt, and she's it was just I was running amok, going crazy at breakfast. My aunt's just quite a bubbly character, and they just came and sat on her, and it's this is hilarious. And then I cried when Minnie came over and gave me a kiss on the cheek.
Oh, you were scared?
I was just nervous, cried, whatever. And I was 6. But yeah, so I've been to the one in Paris. I've not been to the one here yet. It's an experience, I'm sure.
We leave on Friday for a Disney cruise.
A Disney cruise?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're going to be critiquing everybody else now because you know the inside.
Well, what's wild is we actually did one before in 2019, and the cruise director, the person in charge of the entire thing, she and I had done the college program together in like
that's
2004.
So yeah.
I know.
Did she hook you up?
Yeah, she did. We
Good.
really connected. But I saw in her what could have happened if I had never
Like,
left.
this could be me. She's
But I
right
guess
in front
like
of me.
her role was cool, you know. She's traveling the world. She's in a
Yeah.
high position of power. She did have some regrets about, you know, she hadn't had a family yet. She was hoping for that, but her career wasn't conducive to it.
Yeah, that's the plus and the cons, right?
Right,
It's like you're
exactly.
gonna have a great personal time and build your career inside this amazing machine and this company, but you sacrifice having
Exactly.
a life and moving and, you know, to the middle of Oklahoma or whatever it is. You know, you never know.
Yeah.
But
Which really, to bring it full circle, is just why we ended up moving here.
Yeah.
Like Los Angeles was my dream come true until we became this family, and it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
It wasn't a place that I felt like my kids were going to be able to thrive in the same way.
yeah, I have a friend has a similar story, and she ended up going to kickboxing class as a personal protection because she didn't feel it was safe to take her dog outside for a pee. I was
In LA?
Yeah, in LA, and now they live here.
Oh, yeah, seriously. The things that I could tell you
Yeah.
that I experienced in LA will really just kind of make you cringe, but you just accept them as part of life out there.
Right.
Until I was walking around with these baby strollers, and all of a sudden they were unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, I've only been to LA a couple of times when we were in and out, so we didn't get to see too much of it, but I mean, you see everything on the news and the media or whatever it is, like, it's not the place I'd rather live.
It's
You know,
really,
it's
really
amazing
fun.
or it's not,
It's
you know?
so fun, and it's so exciting.
Yeah.
It just doesn't offer what Oklahoma does, which is, you know, the potential to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's a real rat race out there, and out here it's just a lot easier to
why I love it.
do what
here.
you want to do. I know, I love
Pace
it
of
here
life's
too.
great.
Yeah.
Like, just small, big city type thing, and everyone knows everybody or has a connection to somebody. Like, I love it here.
The
I'm not
list
going
of
anywhere.
things that I have here that I never would have gotten in LA, it's thousands.
Yeah.
Small things like air conditioning and parking spot, all the way to big things like
Zero traffic.
seeing my husband at 6 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
Like, just so many things.
Yeah. So high school is coming around. You got to pick college. So you obviously came to OU to see OU before going to LA, but obviously LA was the dream.
Yeah, I looked at a couple of colleges. There was just nothing here that was going to compete with Hollywood, like
Right.
bright lights. I used to have a blog called Bright Lights and Angels about life in LA.
Yeah.
It was just always what I needed to do. And if I hadn't gotten that out of my system, I think there would be a big form of regret.
Yeah. So you get accepted into Biola. What was the degree of choice? And I mean, was any family, like, did any family leave like the nest, or was it you the first one to go?
I'm the oldest.
Okay, so you were the first
Yeah,
one to go.
I was
Yeah.
the first one to go. And it was a big leap. I hadn't even
Yeah.
been on a plane until I was a senior in high school and paid for the ticket myself.
Yeah.
And so to move out there was just, it was a big risk. But they have the best Christian media department in the country. So it's like Biola, Pepperdine, Chapman. They all have really, really good media departments. And
Yeah.
so I studied journalism with a minor in biblical studies and theology.
Okay.
And it ended up being, I mean, I'm still paying for it, so I wish that it wasn't as expensive as it was. But
Right.
aside from that, I couldn't have had a better college experience.
So faith's a big part of your life then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, huge. Like the biggest part.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and now, like, obviously, Life Church is just a powerhouse, and all the other churches going. You know, they're all following that model of basically being a news station.
Right.
You know, like that's probably exciting for you to have seen that entire growth from, you know, college all the way to now. Bobby Grumwald was on a podcast, and we were talking about, and this was 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about, you know, the app and everything, and now he's in the metaverse doing whatever
Right.
it is. It's
Yeah.
bonkers. But
So-
you have such a market for it. There's so many people that are faith-based, so it makes total sense.
Yeah, the stuff that Life Church puts out. And so I've actually worked contract at Life Church
Okay.
in one of their kids shows since moving here.
Yeah.
And that was the most pleasant surprise. That turned around my entire experience in Oklahoma City, because I didn't know that I would still get to be on camera here. I thought that was something that I was giving up, and I grieved it deeply.
Yeah.
And then it ended up not being that at all. I work on camera here more. Because, smaller market, more opportunities.
Right.
But yeah, what Life Church puts out on a global scale is mind-blowing. And with their app, that's, I think, isn't that one of the most downloaded apps in the entire system? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
just looking at it a little bit ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's when you think about it and you put it into context, you're like, this is nuts that it's come from Oklahoma City.
Right?
Or Edmond, their Edmond campus, whatever it is. Like, it's, yeah. Craig should come on the podcast. I've told many people that, and he hasn't listened yet. So
I'll see what
maybe
I can
that'll
do.
happen one day. Who knows? So you go out to LA, first time jumping on a plane. You get there, super excited, eyes are open, and you're kind of probably set free a little bit. You're away from home, and dreams are coming true.
They call it the Biola bubble for a reason.
I mean, I went to Southern Nazarene, so I totally get it.
So it's this little Christian college, about 5,000 students, including grad school. And so I wasn't quite,
That's kind of nice, though.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah.
You know everybody. You know your professors on a personal level. Like, it's actually quite a nice experience.
So, I mean, my husband I met there, my best friends still from there. I see them, we have a roommate reunion every year. It was a great little experience, but I wouldn't quite call that the Hollywood experience.
Sure.
So, I did, some internships and things, and then my senior year, you were supposed to try to job shadow your dream job. And so just blindly, I reached out to editor-in-chief at the time, Benjamin Spetke, who was in charge of Entertainment Weekly.
Okay.
And he said yes. So
Shoot your shot.
I know, right? That's probably my biggest life motto. Like, what's the worst they're going to say?
Yeah.
So I always try. I always take big swings. In fact, right now we are working on the August issue, which is sports, and I want to have all these famous athletes in it. So I just Instagram messaged a bunch of them yesterday, like Shay,
it's exciting,
Nick Collison, Shannon Miller.
Yeah.
Why not try?
Why not?
But so he let me job shadow, and I would say the seed was planted then, 15-ish years ago, for the job that I currently have now, as far as what I would love to end up doing.
So then it was like, it wasn't just the acting side, it was like, I actually love entertainment and giving informational value as well.
Well, I'm a journalist
two
first.
Different things, right?
Journalist first.
Okay.
So, all forms of journalism. I consider myself a multimedia journalist. And that was what I studied. That's what I've always wanted to do. I was trying to take it to the next level in LA, get on the Today Show or something. And so I did a hosting showcase to get a hosting agent. And I did, but I also happened to get a commercial agent.
Gotcha.
And this wonderful woman named Gail, and she's like, Julie, you're so commercial. And I ended up booking the first 2 or 3 that I auditioned for, and the money in commercials is great. And they were really long, but a super fun day on set. And so that's where the acting kind of came in. When the commercials ended up being so profitable and fun, I took some improv classes, and so that's where the comedic acting came in. But I've always considered myself a journalist first. Yeah.
And comedic acting, that's not easy, right? It's not easy to tell a joke when you know the joke and you know the answer and you got to sell it. Like, that's...
What's so weird...
I have a big appreciation for comedians.
I feel like you're either born with it or you're not.
True.
So it's
actually... the delivery that's the hard part, right?
It's not hard for me. I can't explain it, though.
Yeah.
If you tried to put me in some sort of dramatic feature film, which I've auditioned for and never got, that's hard for me.
Yeah.
That I can't necessarily get there. I'm not a thespian.
Do you ever think of doing stand-up?
I've thought of it before. It's a brutal,
it's not easy.
Brutal path.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch any of the behind-the-scenes things on stand-up comedy, like, it's one of the hardest things you can do.
Yeah.
Anybody who's broken into that, they've worked their butt off. And also, I really feel like you don't get to be that funny without having a dark side.
True.
So I really feel like anybody who's successful in stand-up comedy has a dark side.
Yeah, there is a definite connection between dark humor and the better comedy acts out there, right? They're always a little bit on the edge, and one of my favorites is Jim Jeffries, and he flirts that line every day.
I mean, they all do, and the ones that don't are just holding back.
Right, yes. And the other one's Nikki Glazer's hilarious, too.
You know, I really, really love the ones who don't make me cringe so much.
True. Yeah. The ones that you kind of want to listen to with your husband and not feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Do you know the Kentucky Kid?
Who's that?
Bergesian. He's really, really funny. Anyway, I like the ones that I don't like. No, ow, geez.
Yeah,
And
don't say that. It's just uncomfortable.
I'm not a prude or anything like that.
Right.
It's just like, if it makes me cringe, then I'm not enjoying myself as much.
Yeah. Do you think, because Christian comedy has taken its own kind of like rocket ship, right? There's a few famous Christian kind of comedic acts or whatever, and they've just got blown up with social media. Do you think 10 years later, if you were had that chance again, you'd be a social media sensation of comedic Christianity comedy?
Me?
Yeah.
Whew. That's such a good question. I don't know. You know, everybody has these separate paths in life that you could have taken, different careers you could have had, places lived, people you could have married. And I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibilities.
Right.
Maybe if I had grown up in the Vine era or whatever, like Trey Kennedy or Zach King, and maybe.
Yeah. Isn't one of them from here? Wasn't one of them
Trey
in the
Kennedy.
magazine?
I interviewed him in January.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, I don't actually think that guy has a dark side.
That's the hard part, right? He's
so
just hilarious.
Shy and kind and nice. Yeah, so he, maybe I'm wrong about that dark side theory because he's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Maybe he's just really good at hiding it.
That's true.
Really good at hiding
That's
it.
true.
Yeah.
It's down there. It's deep.
Yeah, there are some amazing acts like that, and it's the generation, like you said, that grew up in the Vine and the social media, and you know, you've got to see all of this. But the great thing is that you've seen it before social media, so you understand the craft and you understand where it's come from, which is kind of a nice to, you know, sometimes you hate wanting to live in one world and never see the next, right? Like you've kind of, you know, straddled both of them, which is fun to now emerge into with everything that you do now, which I'm obviously in the social media world. We could talk about that forever and the pros and cons and the good and the bad thing it does to your mental state, but people probably listening have heard me waffle on about it many times before. Moving back to you getting the internship, what was that experience like of you shadowing for your dream job?
I didn't intern at Entertainment Weekly. I had some internships. But I did shadow him, and
how long for?
Just a day.
Okay.
But he took me through his whole job.
Yeah.
And I just looked through the magazines. He let me take any of them that I wanted to. And the process back then is just actually super similar to what we do now at 405 Magazine. The same thing. You come up with these ideas way in advance.
Yeah.
And then it's a bunch of work, and then you throw it out into the universe, and you get to see it come to conception a few months later. And then even past that, you get to see how it's received by the reader and the audience. And
right.
It's this rhythm and this cycle that you just have to be in for the long haul for. And you have to be able to balance that in your mind.
Yeah. Constantly,
people are like, you know, in this mind space of whatever day it is. Like, what is it today? June 15th. I published our June article 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
Right now, my mind is fully in August because that's what I'm working on and that's what I'm finishing up. So sometimes it's a shock to me what day it is because we have to work so far in advance in print media. And that's how it was at Entertainment Weekly, except I think they have to work even further ahead. Like sometimes 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. And the thing is, so much changes in that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, with as fast, I think media companies can move a lot faster now than they did in the past, right?
Well, the thing about
Not print, I guess, but
that's the thing. That's what's cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's one area that I do have an advantage of, being born in the perfect year to be a multimedia person. Is that, yes, you have to work with your evergreen content or the things that you can rely on to still be around 3 months from now and probably not have changed. But we also have this opportunity to work in the digital space, which is stuff that's evolving and literally happening minute by minute.
Yeah, like some guy was climbing the Devon Tower yesterday for people listening. Like,
right?
That's just bonkers.
That was wild.
Yeah.
What's so funny is when that happened, I said, I bet we're going to talk about that on the podcast tomorrow.
I mean, you have to, right? And for people listening now, you know exactly the day we're recording at. Well, you said the date.
Yes, exactly. But it's also
it's just mad, isn't it?
So we're trying to decide who to put on the cover of August, and we want a Thunder player.
Yeah.
And I think
there's only one, right?
What you're talking about?
Mr. Thunder.
Well, that's what's so crazy. We're leaning towards him.
It has to be.
But we're not only leaning towards him. We're also considering.
It's either him or Russ.
Well, we did Russ last year on the cover.
Then it can't
so
be
it's
Russ,
either Mr. Thunder or SGA. But there's a little chance that SGA could get traded between now and August.
Yeah.
And then,
Presti's not going anywhere.
right?
I mean, does it have to be a player?
I'm not. Yeah, it does. All the rest of them are players.
Carlson came back, didn't he? So he's probably the safer bet.
He's one of the ones I emailed.
Also, I would love to have him on the podcast too. So
he's
one day.
I'll see what I can do on that one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so part of it is about taking these risks and what you think will still be there when it happens.
If you were to take that risk and the person you talked about would get traded, is it quite an easy swap to put it in? Or is it oh dear?
No, it's gone.
Printed,
it's to the printer.
Yeah.
I mean, we just wrote an article about you and we misplaced where you're from. We said you're an Englishman, you're a Welshman. Too bad.
Yeah.
It's out there. 200,000 people have seen it.
Yeah.
We can correct it digitally and we can issue a retraction. You know, we regret the error, but it really is this big risk. And if you make a mistake, it is what it is. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's out there.
Yeah. And I know the other struggle you have is paper, right? Like people can't find paper at the moment, which is nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's super. I mean, like I said, you got to take a risk, but think of all the people that could have been on the cover, but they might have been traded or they've done something or whatever it is, and you're like, it's not a safe bet. I've got to go with someone else. There's so many.
So I think if we get the picture, I think I'm going with SGA.
Okay.
And several other legacy athletes, because part of the job is just really understanding what is going to make somebody pick up that magazine.
Yeah.
And so you have to go with who has the most buzz, who people are talking about, who's going to get them excited, who's going to get them curious.
Yeah.
And I feel like Nick Collison, he's a legacy player for us. He's a safe bet. But are people as intrigued with what's happening? Like his story has not been completely written, but we have seen the arc.
We're aware of him.
Yeah, we've seen the arc. We've seen where it's going, essentially. And there's not as much electricity behind that choice.
Yeah. So, I mean, perfect transition into talking about the magazine. You have a couple of kids. You don't like living in LA anymore. You make the decision to come back to Oklahoma City. Do you have a job before you come back to Oklahoma City? Or
I brought my job with me.
Okay.
So before moving, I was a TV news reporter. After having my daughter, I hated those hours. It was just like not it for me anymore.
Like 3 every morning? Or was it just...
You're 17-hour days.
No, it sounds awful.
It's 24 hours. It just is.
Yeah.
That's the problem with Los Angeles and the mentality is that everybody hustles and everybody grinds. My husband was at WeWork.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that. Like both of us were working 24 hours a day. You weren't sleeping, you were working.
Yeah.
And that was fine, especially because we loved what we were doing, until all of a sudden we had these small people who needed attention as well.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough of us to go around between having children and working. And so I left TV news and started working as the managing editor at a Christian teen girls publication called Project Inspired.
Okay.
And I did that for 5 years. That was a great job. The numbers we were putting up at that website were huge. Our biggest monthly page views ever was 14 million. I know, it's
put
wild.
That into context. How many did you get from 4 or 5 now?
Well, we've got about 40,000 in our.
So it was massive then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like,
yes.
That's crazy numbers.
So we reach a couple 100,000 across platforms with 405 Magazine, but so that was literally a worldwide thing, and it was Christian teen girls from all over the world.
Yeah.
We had a pretty big following in Africa, South America, things like that. But I brought that job with me to Oklahoma City because I was doing it virtually.
Yeah.
And
perfect.
It was great. I loved that.
And you're getting paid LA prices and living in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and that was
even better.
That was like evident in the house we were able to get and things like that. And that job ended, and I applied for this job at 405 Magazine in 2019 and did not get it.
Yeah.
And so when it became available again a year ago in 2021, I circled back around and did get it this time.
Gotcha. So you recircle back, you apply, and I mean, there's a great lesson in there, right? If you don't get something the first time, keep trying, right? It's not no, it's no just right now, and it might not be no later.
I in hindsight, I'm really glad I didn't get it then.
Yeah.
Just simply because trying to be a working parent during the pandemic with school-age children was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And this job is pretty demanding. I just don't think I could have pulled them both off at the same time.
Right.
And so in this season of life, when both my kids are in school, I'm able to devote the time and energy needed to doing it. But what's crazy is when I didn't get that job in 2019, it stung because I knew I would have crushed it and I knew it was a good fit. And so I kind of put it out of my mind. I tried unfollowing them on social media, but it was always coming
see it
up.
everywhere.
Like it was nagging. I would see, we have a really large presence in the city. It would come up, and for some reason I had this gut feeling that story wasn't over. And then I'd tell myself, oh, no, it's good. I like where I've landed. But it was just always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's some of the things that I had turned down, and you can't stop seeing those things.
Right?
It's like, I've got to do something about it. It's really irritating me.
Right.
It just nags at you, doesn't it? And you can't explain it to anyone else. And even if you do, they still don't get it. And you're just like, I want this job. And then it probably eats you even more. And even though sometimes you think, I could live without this job, there's part of your brain saying, no, you need this.
Right.
Because you'll be really good at it.
It's so crazy, the internal conflict that happened for those few years and how spot on I was and how hard I tried to talk myself out of it.
So you finally get the job, middle of COVID, right?
Actually, it was
end of COVID.
Not the end, because we're still kind of in the end, but it was at the end-ish. It wasn't in the worst part of it anymore. It was July of last year. What
was that kind of interview like, and what was your sales pitch, I guess, to the people hiring you to say, I'm the right person for this job, you should hire me?
Well, I work for a husband and wife publishing team. Mm-hmm. They have a couple of different magazines, and she and I connected on a really deep soul level even the first time. Yeah. I could tell she wanted to go with me the first time, but I didn't have much experience in print. And they gave it to somebody way seniored who'd been at the Oklahoman, and I could just tell. So when I circled back around, I said, oh, hey, I didn't expect this role to be open. She's like, oh, do you want to apply? I'm like, no, I really love what I'm doing. I had gone on retainer for a couple of different brands doing marketing. I'm like, what I'm doing right now is just really profitable and flexible. But
it's totally soft selling it, right?
But let's meet for coffee.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
Let's just meet for coffee. Let's just be friends.
Right.
And we met for coffee, and it was just, we were vibing, and she said all the right things. Mm-hmm. And I found myself saying yes. I couldn't not. If you're thinking about something constantly, it's probably something you should do.
Yeah.
It's just like, I didn't even work there. I had already told her no. And I'm in the shower, like, running through all these story ideas. And so I interviewed with several different people, the team, the people who would be my art director, Christopher, some of the writers, things like that. Yeah. And I remember talking to my husband about it and was like, it's sort of like with the LA thing.
Yeah.
I have to know.
Right.
If I don't, it's going to eat at me forever.
Yeah, because you're always going to think, what if? Yeah. Right? And that's the worst thing you can ever have.
Like, why did I play it safe?
Yeah.
Why didn't I just at least see how it was going to work out? And I kid you not, it clicked immediately. It was just like evident that this is what I'm great at. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. This is how I can help the city move forward, get the word out, tell people stories.
Yeah.
It was just the right gig at the right time.
Super exciting too, because there's so much going on here, right? Like every corner you turn, there's something happening. Like
this
even
is
just
one of the most
down
exciting
here.
Places to be in the country right now.
Yeah.
Like we are just rising every day, a new thing.
Yeah.
Women's softball World Series just busting through. We're having, like, our population is just climbing shocking amounts. We're the 20th largest city now.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's unheard of.
Crazy.
We were sitting at not the Collective, but the one that's across the street from Scissortail. What's that called?
Sorry, I can't think. The
group of restaurants and then there's the second floor.
Oh, yeah. Social
capital. Yeah. We were sitting there
Yeah.
the other night on the second floor, and there was a concert happening at CitiCABLE Park. And I look over, and from CitiCABLE Park to the convention center to the Omni, none of this was here.
No.
5 years ago. Like, I got emotional at the time just thinking of what the city has been able to accomplish.
And they're beautiful buildings too.
Yes.
Like convention center at night when it's lit up.
Yeah. The whole
fantastic.
thing, breathtaking. Yeah, I feel like CitiCABLE Park, like the statue was sparkling, the music was playing.
Yeah.
It is vibrant right now, and the city did this for itself. That's my favorite thing about it.
Yeah.
Like, not to talk bad about the gathering place, but that was gifted to them by an individual or a foundation. Everything that we just talked about, the city bought for itself.
Yeah.
That's what I find so inspiring about the whole thing.
Yeah. And then that makes you like kind of reinforce the decision to come to Oklahoma City over going to Austin, Nashville, Dallas, or the other ones that were on, because there's something different about us here compared to those cities, compared to LA. I mean, you come here and you're like, these are my people.
Right.
Like everyone's kind of moving in the right direction and they want to go to the next level.
Yeah.
Right? They'll do anything they want to get there. It's
that, for lack of a better term, it's that why not mentality. Russell Westbrook had it. Mayor Holt has it. The vibe of the city has it. I have it. It's like we're building something cool. We are getting to be a part of history, and it's like this fun, amazing, inspiring time. If you want to do something in Oklahoma City, you can. Like, the story hasn't been written yet. It is on the upswing.
It's going to be a great clip for Instagram Reels. Guys, just like listening, thinking, this is just gold. That's awesome. No, you're so right, though. Like, and I've been here 11 years now and just kind of seeing everything grow and just the people kind of embrace it. And, you know, I know we bang on about our food scene now, but it is truly insane how good it is.
Yeah.
You know? And obviously you can speak to that because you've come from LA, and LA's food scene is generally pretty good as well.
Right.
You know, and just, but you go to kind of family attractions, you know, and I think we have, the River Sport Red Bull race or something is coming to River Sport soon, which anything Red Bull does is amazing, and it's just coming to the River Sport district now, which is just Bojas district, which is like, that's going to be amazing.
Right.
You know, and that's not just for people who are generally into water sports. Like, anybody can go to that and have an absolute blast.
Right, yeah. So I was walking, I went to dinner the other night when the softball series was happening. There were shirts everywhere. You could just tell people had traveled from all over the place to come be a part of this and to see this. And to see, and you know, they've started a professional softball league here. Did you know this?
I did not know that.
Lauren
I know the
Chamberlain.
home of USA softball is here.
She would be a great guest too. She's the commissioner for this new professional women's softball league that's starting here.
Yeah.
It's just like buzz is happening. It's not getting looked over anymore. In fact, like, I anticipate, and I'm sure you do when we work in real estate, like, these growing pains are about to get real.
Oh, yeah. They can't build houses fast enough out here.
Right.
The good thing is we have room.
Right. Yeah.
But they just can't get the materials fast enough.
Like, the urban sprawl, luckily, we have these big, flat, undeveloped lands. But, you know, our infrastructure, our roads, our budgets, all of these things, it's going to be painful, but it's something that a lot of people want to be a part of, and I don't want to turn them away.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's just an exciting time to be in this city, and it's, you know, I had my parents here a couple of weeks ago, and even just showing them, like, they haven't been here since 2019, and just to go out for dinner at different places since they've been here and take them to, you know, to have experiences at other places. It's stuff that, like, wasn't available in 2019, which is not that long ago.
Right, yeah.
Right? Everyone thinks it was yesterday. We lost COVID years or whatever.
It feels like it.
But it's just amazing. And you know, the good thing is that you are in the middle of showcasing this to, you know, the city and surrounding areas through the magazine. So you're a really, really cool part in this. I
went on assignment, and if you dig hard enough, you'll find out, but I don't want to say the town specifically. I went to a town who's going through the opposite experience that we are, and you can feel it. You can feel it. It's heavy.
Dying a slow death.
People aren't jazzed.
Yeah.
Your Uber drivers aren't working on side projects. They're like telling you where to stay away from. It's just So Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love, she just talked about getting the vibe of the city, and every city has words that you can use to describe it. And right now, Oklahoma City is just resilient and confident, and I feel like it was captured super well in Boomtown. How the fabric of the city has always been like that. It's not just something that us newcomers are experiencing right now. Like, people generations ago believed in this city and did things to get us where we are now, finally getting to experience this renaissance.
Right. Yeah, Sam did a great job. That book is amazing.
Yeah.
Still to this day, it's amazing.
This is one of my favorite books I've ever read.
Yeah.
The part where he's talking about, he does the land run. If you haven't read Boomtown, you have got to read Boomtown. He does the land run on a summer day. He walks with his own feet the path, and he talks about it and talks about experiencing what they might have. Yeah. It's crazy.
And it's like in the middle of summer.
I know. I felt like I was living...
zero water as well.
Yeah, he talks about
he was not prepared.
Starting to pass out and getting exhausted and just...
It's brilliant.
Feeling what those people might have felt like... That's where I'm going to thrive. And I feel like that's what a lot of people that are just moving here are thinking as well.
Definitely.
What I like to think about a lot and try to find the balance of, there's been some people who lived here for generations. And so I try to not forget about them. You know what I mean?
Right. There are some legacy families, right?
Yes.
That have been here for a long time.
Yeah.
And
established residents.
Yeah, in Mester Park or whatever, Heritage Hills. Yeah.
And I don't want to make it seem like it was a wasteland.
Right.
Whenever their families were being raised here 20, 30 years ago, because they were part of what has turned it into this beautiful, prosperous town that it is now.
And the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is First National.
Yeah, oh my gosh,
the history
right?
behind that. And the good thing is that now what Gary has done is bringing all that history kind of full circle back around to make people more aware of the actual building and who was around to do it. So, and that place is incredible too. Yeah,
I think there's an amazing way. So there's this article, travel writer Matt, if you read it for Thrillist, talking about this former flyover town no longer. Did you get a chance to check that one out?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay.
He captures it, and he talks about in Oklahoma City, there's this constant tension between all of this new innovation and progress while still trying to honor the things that made this town what it is. Like the tribes and the oil fields and the southern influence.
Yeah.
All of that, like
Cattle
honoring
industry.
Yes, exactly.
Which is massive here.
Like honoring all of that while blending it together with what it is now and how it's all of the above.
Yeah.
We're not just looking forward, we're also incorporating it. Another great example of that is First Americans Museum. Like, that has been in the works for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's wild that...
Isn't it crazy that it's been in the works for that long?
Isn't that nuts?
It's nuts, yeah.
Just to think of the scope and how long it took to come to fruition and how many people had to come and get on board together. Just that alone makes me emotional. That they were able to pull that off and that it turned out so beautiful.
Right. Well, and to kind of circle back to the magazine as well, it's not, you guys have done more stuff. Like you don't just have 4 or 5 magazine, you launched a business mag this year too, right? Which some of the covers have been incredible, and the guys on the covers, you have Lopez Foods was one of them, the medical guy I can't think about, who I tried to get on the podcast. He hasn't responded to my text yet. One day. You're
going to need to give me a list of people you want, because
you might regret that.
I probably have most of their contact information.
But it's amazing to see that, right? Not just only see oil field work or cattle industry, and the ranching stuff, or, just like this is the city that's growing. It's amazing to see the people who are here that are building global businesses, which most people are like, there's not, sure, Oklahoma City has some cool business people. And then until you read the business magazine, you're like, okay, these guys are like making a huge impact. Simple Modern, for example. Yeah,
Simple Modern's like, I hope I'm not breaking the story, but he's going to be on an upcoming cover this year.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
we did a podcast. He's very Michael, right? Am I thinking?
I don't know off the top of my head. So we grew.
Very interesting.
We have monthly, which is every month.
Yeah.
And then we have Home, which is 4 times a year, and they have a different editor-in-chief. And then we have 405 Business, which is 6 times a year, which has a different editor-in-chief. And then City Guide, which is for newcomers. And that doesn't even start going into our digital properties, like our newsletters and things. And there's not a shortage of content.
No,
I think we're
not at all.
Right now, I think we're the perfect market size. Like, it's small enough to know everyone, but not so big that you get lost.
Right, like the city guide is perfect, right? Because it's not overwhelming, but it's plenty of choice to where you can think, okay, like whatever income level you are, whatever like, so you know, whatever nights out you want to have or breakfast you want to have, whatever it is, there is an abundance of things in there for each person, which is, I mean, so valuable. And people come to this now because of the convention center and everything else. People are coming to Oklahoma City to spend a long weekend. Like, when was that ever a thing?
I know, right?
Right? Plus, someone's like, you know, I bumped into someone the other day and I had a T-shirt on that they made a comment from, and I was like, you don't sound like you're from here. Which is funny that I say that, right? Because I clearly don't. And they're like, no, we've come into town from somewhere in Texas, which is hilarious. I love people who come up here from Texas. But yeah, I was like, why are you here? Oh, we just came for a long weekend. Like, again, why are you here?
Right?
You know, like,
it's becoming easier. It used to be you had to know somebody in town who could tell you the little hidden places to find.
Yeah.
And they're not so hidden anymore.
Well, and sometimes we don't want to share those places.
Right,
We never want to
exactly.
tell anybody about Cafe Cacao or going to Bradford House.
I still have never been to Cafe Cacao. It's so crowded.
Please.
I know. No, it's not for lack of trying.
We should probably just go after this.
I would if we could get in. I finally got into Frida. Like, I'm telling you, these places are competitive. Even.
Well, you also have a family and you're busy. So for me,
That's
I
true.
go at like, 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. It's
even
totally fine.
Chicken and Pickle.
Yeah?
We are their second location. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Their first location.
Yeah. Which I haven't gotten into the
Kansas City.
whole pickle thing, pickleball yet.
Well, you're going to love it. The second you do, you'll be addicted.
I might roll my ankle and then I'll resent somebody.
Old
who's
people
taking
play
me
it.
there.
Really, really old people. You'll be fine.
Got
But Chicken and Pickle is like the second location. They chose it here, and it is thriving. You get online 2 weeks before to try to reserve an indoor court, and you can't.
You can't get it.
Yeah, it's literally like trying to get concert tickets to try to book a court at Chicken and Pickle.
Right. Which that is increasing too. We're actually getting better acts.
I
now
know.
coming
Andre
here.
Bonatelli is coming this week.
That's going to be so good.
If I wasn't on the cruise, I was planning to go.
That's someone who you go see even if you don't like his music, just to
I
experience.
know, but I do love his music.
Yeah?
I went
Kind of
on to buy
strut
tickets.
around the house blasting his music out, wake up the kids in the morning.
Definitely not that. More so like in a melancholy mood, need to think some things through,
enough.
flip on Andre, that kind of thing.
All right. The other thing that we need to talk about, which you're probably going to laugh when I say this, but Mr. Skidmore has suggested we talk about birds. And if people listening don't know who Mr. Skidmore that is David Skidmore. And I'll put his Instagram in the description because he's awesome. But you recently were interviewed by him and he couldn't get a lot off about the bird stuff, but you're very passionate about birds?
It's still kind of hard for me to say out loud because it's
Everybody
just,
has a weird thing they like. It's okay.
It's not the sexiest of hobbies, but yes. In the last few years, I've become an avid bird watcher.
Okay.
And it happened really, really organically. So my grandmother passed from Tulsa. I picked up some things from their house, and one of them was a hummingbird feeder because she always had a ton. I put it out back in my patio. No hummingbirds came. I do some Google research.
Okay.
You need to put up red things to attract the hummingbirds.
Okay.
So I put up a hanging red plant. I put up a bunch of different red flowers and red ribbons and stuff.
Yeah.
And a house finch puts a nest in the red plant. And then a cowbird. Do you know about these?
I have no idea.
Okay, so a house
I'm
finch.
learning a lot here.
Okay, a house finch is a little bird,
Yeah.
and they put a nest in. A cowbird, I can't believe we're talking about this. Are you sure you're ready for this conversation?
We have time.
Okay, so a cowbird is native to Oklahoma,
Okay.
but they are a parasitic bird. So they drop their massive eggs in other birds' nests, let the other birds incubate them, and feed them to the detriment of the rest of the babies in the nest.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
So cowbirds' histories with Oklahoma go way back. They used to travel with buffalo herds.
Okay.
So they're actually a protected species. You're not legally allowed to remove the cowbird eggs,
Even though they're ruining the other bit.
even though they kill
no sense.
massive amounts of songbirds.
Yeah.
So if you look it up, cowbird babies are about the size of a baseball. And all these other babies and full-grown birds like from the size to like a golf ball, that sort of thing. So these little full-grown birds are feeding these massive babies.
Yeah.
Anyway, the hummingbirds came, the finches came, the cowbirds came, and me as a journalist and a researcher just spiraled. And over the course of the years, it's grown, and I moved, and I live on the edge of a green belt. So I have during the summers, 19 different feeders, as well as birdhouses. And each feeder and its corresponding food is set to attract a different bird. And so there's been some on my bucket list, like the painted bunting. It's a rainbow bird. It took me about 2 years, but I finally got those to come to my yard.
Yeah.
And I've seen everything from like giant hawks who live out in the green belts, and turkey vultures, all the way down to a couple of I've seen 3 different species of hummingbirds.
Yeah.
And I can't totally justify why this happened, but it's become one of my deepest passions.
But I mean, it's like build it and they will come.
Yes.
Like it's the bird equivalent of like that whatever baseball movie that people are crucifying me listening to this I'm talking about.
Field of Dreams?
That one, yeah.
Yes.
The Costner, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. It's
and
like
I like the fact that you do that instead of going out into a field and like putting your binos on and just kind of spotting birds.
Yeah, I don't have the time for that,
Yeah.
but I do sit out there every morning with my binoculars that stay on. So they're on there.
Yeah.
I'm usually listening to something on my phone, either
Bonicelli.
sometimes. And then I even have a nectar ring sometimes, so they'll come right up to me. But it's fascinating to me that you could build this ecosystem in your backyard on your property here, or if you even have an apartment on your patio. You just have to have some sort of access to an outdoor space. And yes, they will come to you. And so the January issue of 4 or 5 magazine, the cover was birding. And the whole thing is just about it. But it's also about how hobbies positively affect your mental health.
Right, yeah.
That was the whole spin on it. And one of the quotes in there was talking about how bird watching and birding essentially really is about the cultivation of patience, and that as a discipline that brings you happiness and peace. And so you set out to patiently wait there for these birds, and in the end, whether or not they come, you have still experienced a quiet moment of meditation. And so I think that's
It's fascinating.
in summary, like that's a daily part of my life, and it's one of my favorite things. And my husband said I went to bed one night and woke up 80. But I love it. I'm going to be able to do this for the remainder of my days, which is so exciting to me.
Right, and then you can just kind of, patiently build something that, like you said, it took you 2 years to get a certain bird. Like, this could sometimes might take 5 years, whatever it is, but when that day comes.
Oh my gosh, when I saw the painted bunny, I wept. I wept. I watched it like take this moment in, and then when it had been there like maybe 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, I think I can get my phone out and capture this moment. It was so great.
Pretty close to you then?
Yeah. Yeah, probably 20 feet.
Okay.
But so I saw Mayor Holt before the issue came out, and I told him I was putting birding on the cover, and he's like, "You put a bird on the cover of a magazine about Oklahoma City, a bird?" I really second-guessed myself. Like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Of all the cool things in this town, I went with a bird. Matt Payne and I actually have this shared passion. He helped us with that feature.
Yeah.
It went over great. I was right. Holt was wrong. But it was a risk, and he did make me second-guess myself. But I hope that through this evangelizing that a few more people have considered it as a hobby.
Yeah. I mean, just listening to you talk about it, I love the fact, again, that you bring them to you. Like, I think that people think of birding in general, and they think, I'm going to go in the middle of a field, in the middle of nowhere, it takes me an hour to get there, and all this time, and I might just see a hawk pick up a mice or whatever it is, and that's it. But I'm glad you explained that, because it makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it comes from your nan's house, and that's kind of sentimental, and then you take up this hobby, and you never expected it, and now you are endlessly doom scrolling at the end of the night.
I know, right? It's wild.
Learning about birds.
I think I told this story on David's podcast, so if it's a repeat to any of you guys, sorry about that, but maybe there's not that much crossover audience. So remember that big giant freeze that happened?
Yeah. every February for the last 2 years?
No, the big one.
Oh, okay.
The big one.
The really bad one.
That was like 10 days long at the end of this.
2 years ago?
It was February, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody lost power, pipes froze, people dying.
Yeah.
Well, 90% of the state's bluebirds froze to death during that.
Oh,
It's
that's
awful, right?
Yeah.
They froze to death by the dozens, huddled together in their little houses. It was
heartbreaking.
awful. Well, this really, really bothered me. But in researching that, I discovered that the United States bluebird population was on decline decades ago. And then this researcher formed the Bluebird Audubon Society and discovered that bluebirds, more than most bird species, are willing to accept man-made birdhouses to build their nests in.
Okay.
So he encouraged people to put up bluebird houses on their properties, and lo and behold, the bluebird population began to rise in the United States. And so I decided I would focus my efforts towards prioritizing making this bluebird population thrive again in whatever small way I could. So I got a new kind of feeder, I got some mealworms, I put up a little house, and within, I kid you not, 10 minutes, a bluebird checked it out.
Yeah.
I didn't get a bluebird nest that first season, but a full year later, sure enough, this last summer, a bluebird couple built a nest in there, fully successful, raised several babies, they fledged out, and now sometimes the babies come back to my yard. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like those are my babies. Like, the steps that I took helped give those babies life.
Right.
I can't explain how much fun this is for me.
The next you're going to tell me is you now have a business that's worldwide that develops these birdhouses.
I don't. No, I just go to like an agricultural shop or whatever and buy one. But I would really encourage anybody who's looking for a hobby to consider
Julie's birdhouses. There it is.
No, just birding. Just do birding. I promise. If you have the least bit of interest in research and, building things, you'll love it.
All right. People listening, they probably didn't expect that, but
I'm not 100%.
That's the beauty of this podcast.
I'm not confident that you're not going to cut that entire thing.
I am going to leave it all in.
Okay.
I leave most of the things in.
All right. You're right. It's such a
even
tangent.
the things that make me sound stupid.
And it's so weird that this has become such a big part of my personality. I used to be really fun. I used to be super cool.
You're a comedic writer.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
Oh, just to think about 10 years ago, me, when given the opportunity to talk about stuff I love, that wouldn't have been on the list. If I had gotten a chance to list 500 things, that wouldn't have been on it.
What do the girls think about it?
They're into it too.
Yeah, they love it.
They're so cute.
Yeah.
The birds come and they run and grab their iPads, they take pictures. As far as they know, this is one of the coolest things there is because they know nothing different. I'll be like, girls, there's an oriole. We've never had an oriole before. They'll be like, oh my gosh, Mom. Or they'll come get me if they see something neat.
Right.
Mom, a hummingbird fight.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings you together too, right?
It does,
it's something that, if you're going to speak to them in 20 years and you're going to ask them, what do you remember? They're like, the birds, Mum. I remember the birds.
Yeah, she's crazy about those birds. And what's wild is I love that it spans back to my grandmother.
Yeah.
It feels like I've kept a part of her going through this hummingbird thing.
Yeah. That's what makes it all make sense, right?
Right.
It makes it also less strange. Right, it's the fact that you tie it back, it gives it context, and you have this memory now of and it also kind of makes you think you wish you'd have had those conversations with your nan too.
Yeah,
just I would have loved to have had this passion together now that you now will have with your daughters.
Yeah,
which is really cool to think of it that way.
It's almost like an episode of This Is Us.
Yeah.
Like it's me and my grandmother as a grade schooler and her watching her hummingbirds together. Fast forward 3 decades, and it's them as children having those same conversations.
So good. I love the world and the cycles that we make. It's just, we never think they're going to, with the turns that we take, we never think it's going to happen. And think of all the birds that you've saved and the birds that you've brought into the backyard, which is, it was, no doubt it was a decision when you bought the house, you had to back up to a green belt.
Yeah, and I'm never going back.
No, you can't.
I will not go away from that.
Never.
Like, even in my retirement years, I have some birding goals. Like, I'd like to have a purple martin house.
Okay.
But those are pretty consuming. You have to lower them daily, and clear out certain types of predators.
That's a job.
I almost did it last year, and then I realized what a commitment it was going to be, and it's not the right time. But I've got some future plans.
Talking of future plans, let's finish up with, because you know, like you said earlier, your mind's in August and constantly in the future. Finishing up, what are you excited about? What can you kind of tell us or not tell us yet about what's coming? I mean, give people a little nugget, I guess, of why they should support 405 Magazine and pick it up in the future.
Well, first of all, everyone should subscribe to 405 Magazine because it will help you find out about the amazing things that are going on in this town. The places to eat, the shows to go to, the people of interest that are making big changes and taking big swings, the artists in the town. It's essential as somebody who lives in Oklahoma City just to be on board with everything that's going on right now. And upcoming, we have a sports issue, Your Guide to Game Day. We have Best New Restaurants. And
I bet that's a tough list.
You know, Greg.
There's so many.
Greg's in charge of it, and he does an incredible job. And then we also have something coming up towards the end of the year that I'm incredibly excited. We have Fall Family Fun Guide coming up. Okay. But we also have one that's going to be a little bit of a risk for me, but it's really similar to what we've been talking about right now. We're going to have the transformation issue, which looks at how Oklahoma City has transformed. And we're still figuring out exactly what that looks like, but I'm super excited about it. So first of all, subscribe, follow us on social channels, continue the conversation. But something that I really, really want people to hear is that I would love to hear their stories, and I would love to hear what they're working on and possibly be able to turn it into a story. I love being able to connect the people who are working on something with the people who want to hear about what they're doing. Yeah. So send me an email, connect with me on socials, tell me what you're working on, tell me what you're passionate about, because I'm sure there's a story there, and I'm sure that we can find a way to get more people on board with what they're doing and what they're passionate about.
Yeah. 405 doesn't have a podcast, do they?
No.
Is that just like a decision not to have one? Or I mean, it seems like
I actually pitched that right when I got there.
Yeah.
Podcasts make our leadership nervous.
Really?
They feel like it's a good way to say something you didn't mean to. Do you get that a lot? Do people say things and they're like, oh, you have to edit that out? Or
and then a lot of the time, and you'll obviously as a previous, you hosted a podcast, this, that the podcast generally opens up things. People talk about stuff on the podcast that they would never talk about around a crowd, right? Or around other people. So it just kind of, which is great for the interviewer, right? And the audience, but sometimes for that guest, they're like, I probably shouldn't have said that. Which one thing that I do is I tell everybody that comes on the podcast, I'll send it to you before you listen to it. And if you want to take it out or ever want to do it again, let's do it again. But then, there are times where most of the guests are like, it's fine, just don't worry about it, and I'll put it out, and it'll be okay.
There is something deceptive about the format. Definitely. It literally, when you're filming it, feels like you're having coffee with a friend. Yeah. Yet,
it's the best feeling in the world.
Usually, thousands of people aren't privy to those conversations. Yeah. So I think that's why we don't have one yet. It's still, on my list of dreams, and I'd love to at least have audio editions. Yes. So we're leaning that direction, trying to incorporate that maybe at some point in the future.
If you need someone with an accent to do reads, I can try. I was terrible at reading as a kid, but I can try.
Yeah, so I would love to expand to your audience and for them to join our readership. It's a great place to be. It's a fun project to be a part of, and I'm really happy to be there.
Awesome. Well, Julie, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, you're extremely busy. Can't wait to hear about the birds next time I see you. Can't wait to dive into the magazine, even the business issue, the city guide, the fall guide that's coming out. It's exciting, and it's great that everybody at 405 just kind of has this collective love for this city and do great writing. Obviously, Greg does awesome work with the food, and a lot of people just come together to create this multiple publications that give so much value to not only the city, the residents of this city, but the guests of this city as well.
So Mayor Hull gave a speech at one of our events, and he's like, every great city needs mythology, and they need somebody writing the first and second draft of the history of the city. And so we at 405 Magazine are really privileged to feel like that's exactly what we're doing.
Definitely. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming down. For everyone listening, I'll post the links to the stuff that we've mentioned in the podcast. Maybe Julie's email if she wants to give it out.
Sure. Julie.Partin, Partin at 405magazine.com. I love corresponding with readers.
Yes, and we'll find you, and maybe your story makes it into a magazine article and adds value to the rest of your community. So thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next episode.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.